So what's up, people, and welcome to the Chapter 26 discussion of Choujin X. So Chapter 26 came out a few weeks ago, and it came out in two parts, which is quite unique for the publisher. And I will leave a link to both parts that are being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, I will go take a look at it right away before they pull these chapters back. Okay, so chapter 26. Over these many chapters, Sui Ishida has been giving out little tidbits of information to give you some better idea of what this story is about. This story is extremely sublime, and it's hard to figure out what is going on, even more so than his previous story, Tokyo Ghoul. But every chapter you do get rewarded by a little bit more information, and chapter 26 is no different. The chapter starts out with a little bit more history, where we find out that during that war between the Choujin nation of the Great Guleta and the rest of the world, the leader of the Great Guleta, a gentleman named Queen Macman, declared war on the rest of humanity. And from what we can figure out in chapter 26, this wasn't just an ideology war, nor was it something just out of anger, but it seemed to be that this Choujin really enjoyed killing people. And because of that, he took great sport in that, and that was part of the reason this war existed, was for his own personal entertainment. And we find out what sort of power he had in that he was able to create himself into extremely modern forms of weaponry. And we see here how he has transformed himself into a bomber, and he is attacking a group of religious believers. And the other thing we find out about Queen Macman is that he seemed to be very much against religion, and because he took pleasure in killing of people, he focused a lot of that on religious groups. But it was during the time when he attacked the region of Yamato that there was a group of resistance fighters that went up against him. And it seems like during that attack, the majority of them died except one person. And that person eventually went on to become the founder of the Yamato Mori organization. And so it seems like the Yamato Mori came into existence due to the effects of the war. And there was a very powerful individual, most likely a Choujin, that resisted and fought against the onslaught of Queen Macman. And so was this Choujin X, or was Queen Macman Choujin X? Or were there two? Is there always a creation of a darker individual and a lighter individual, and the conflict happens between them? I don't know. But it is interesting that he is bringing out these little tidbits that give you some more information with regards to how the conflict was resolved in the past. We still don't know what's going on, but we do get a little bit more each time we read these chapters. And then we come back to the present. And we do see that most likely the world is going to go into another conflict because they keep on talking about Choujin X. And what's interesting is you see two individuals being focused during those conversations. One is Tokyo and the other is Azuma. So the question that would come up is, if there were two Choujin X's rather than one, and if they were always created to become in conflict, one to focus on the dark side of humanity and the other to focus on the light, is that going to happen again? And is there any relationship with that and Azuma and Tokyo? That's hard to say. This is all complete speculation, and for all we know, none of it is going to be that way. Sui Ishida is a very mysterious person when he writes these stories, and so it's hard to say, but it is interesting how the story is bringing out clues in that manner. And we come back to the present where Ichiro is talking with Sandek, and they're discussing the history of humanity and how the founder of the Yamato Mori was able to somehow battle against the country of the Great Guleta. And they start discussing the situation about the possibility of another Choujin coming into the situation. And they in fact mention some gentleman named Master Mado who made a premonition that a Choujin X would reappear again and potentially destroy the Yamato Mori. And so Ichiro during that conversation asks if that is the reason why Sandek is keeping a close eye on Asuma. And what's interesting is Sandek's reply is that the reason he's close to Asuma is because Asuma reminds him of his younger brother. And that gives some information with regards to Sandek's past. And from that point, we switch to Asuma. And he is with Ellie and Tokyo after he has made amends with Ellie. And during that time, both Simon and Momoa greet them. And it is at this time that Simon seems to be venting his anger at Asuma, mostly because of the fact that Asuma almost killed him during the last confrontation. And regardless of whether Asuma joins the Yamato Mori or not, Simon states that he will not trust a person who cannot control their powers. And so this already creates a rift between these two characters, and it'll be interesting to see how the development grows between the two. Will they further divide as we go along, or will there be a situation where something brings them closer together? We're not sure. But it is interesting how Sui Ishida is setting up these relationships within the group. But before the conversation can continue, Ichiro interrupts them and suggests that since there are so many characters who have come in new, and because there was so much problems with the last confrontation, he suggests that they should have a training program outside of the headquarters. And the next thing you know, they are now in some secluded island, and the rest of the chapter starts off this training program. Now, what we find out in chapter 26, part 2, is that this island was where the founder of the Yamato Mori made their last stand against the Great Guleta. And Ichiro mentions that had the founder not been able to push Queen Macmem back, the entire territory of Japan may have been destroyed. And so this island was an important historical site to the Yamato Mori, and it was an appropriate place for training. And after some interesting comical moments and a little bit of fan service, the group eventually goes into training. And what we find out is not only is Ellie, Asuma, and Tokyo participating in the training, but so is Simon and Momoa. Ichiro mentions that since they did not perform well in the last confrontation between Asuma, they should continue to train to become stronger. And so Ichiro takes up the role of managing this training project, and he gives each of these individuals an objective. And so for Tokyo, he tells him that he should start training to control his powers better so that he doesn't have to turn into a full bird Choujin each time he uses his power. If he can just transform certain parts of his body so that he still remains human and somewhat in a conscious control, this will give him the ability to not only use his Choujin powers and strength, but use them in a manner where he is still conscious as a human being. Now, as for Asuma, we find out that Asuma still really doesn't know what his power is all about, but whatever power he has, it's extremely powerful, and it has the habit of making him lose control of himself. And so his training is to first identify exactly what his power is, and then, of course, somehow control it better. Now, for Ellie, Ichiro tells her that she needs to come up with even more moves. The number of moves she has is pretty impressive, but it is still limited, and because of that, it's holding her back when she needs to confront against an enemy as powerful as Asuma. And so it's a continuation of her ability to use her smoke Choujin powers better. And as for Simon and Momoa, it's basically a simple thing. Go back to your roots and learn what your power is so that you could just become stronger with the abilities that you already have. Now, within this chapter, we also are introduced to two more characters because Ichiro says that he can't teach all of them alone. And so we are introduced to two more senior level Choujins, and they turn out to be officers from a district that's different from the Yamato Mori. And so now we find out that there are areas outside of the Yamato Mori which have law-abiding Choujins in a different precinct. And we are introduced to two characters, Shadow and Roha. And they have some very interesting powers. Roha is a spike Choujin. And as for Shadow, well, he has the power of darkness. Now, that is always an interesting power because it's so ambiguous. You could always create multiple capabilities to whatever darkness means. It'll be interesting to see what their powers are like. And now that we've set up the training situation, we of course remember in chapter 25 that the evil Smoke Choujin and the pharmacist has already started developing their next plan, and the chapter ends with a group of evil Choujins closing in on what I believe is the island. And we see some very disturbing images again, and we're not exactly sure what this new evil Choujin can do, but I got a feeling that we will find out pretty soon. But in any case, this once again sets up the next arc for these stories, and we get some more information with regards to the history of this world, as well as some understanding of what Choujin X means once again. And so it'll be interesting to see how this goes out. Now, chapter 27 has already come out, so I'll bring out a discussion for that in the near future. I hope you join me at that time, but this has been the chapter 26 discussion for Choujin X. If you read it, what do you think about it? If you could leave your comments in the discussion section, I would appreciate it. And until the next episode, happy manga reading, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.